Hello, you.
Hey, hey, how's it going?
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Reality Podcast. It's your host, Layla, and we have a special guest here today. Go ahead and introduce yourself, guest.
My name Malik. You feel me? Just a homeboy. It's weird.
Right. So we have a very fun topic for you guys today. We're going to be talking about men. So I figured it was appropriate to bring a man on and just pick his brain a
Boo,
little bit.
boo. My fault. My fault. I thought I was with the girlies for that one.
Yeah.
My fault. My fault.
No. Yeah, so we're gonna be talking about you a little bit. Not really the whole video, but you was what inspired this a little bit. And I've already watched season 5. He hasn't seen season 5, but it's okay. He's seen everything else, so it's fine if you haven't seen it. There's not gonna be that many spoilers, but just the concept of the main character, Joe, and his relationship with masculinity. So yeah, we can get right into it. So, one thing I noticed about Joe and about you is his idea of feeling the need to be needed and how that reflects in his relationships with him trying to be this white knight, this protector. He has to take on this role in order to feel fulfilled in his relationships. If he doesn't feel needed, he doesn't feel fulfilled. Is that you raising your hand or?
No, no, no. I'm listening. I'm listening.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
listening.
Well, it's okay because I want to ask you a question. So, like, 'cause I see a lot of everybody, including women, even in relationships, talk about how they need their man or how men are supposed to feel needed. So they just let their man like feel needed, even if that means like compromising their integrity, things that they already know how to do. They just want their man to feel needed so that the man will be happy. So,
Mhm.
as a man, do you think you could answer why men feel the need to be needed?
I think it actually stems from societal teachings. I think a
Mm,
lot of it comes from, I want to say some of it is innate, but I do
mm,
think a large portion of it is societal. I think it stems from men innately come up, innately you feel like you have to do something. You innately feel like a provider. So
mm,
when you come up with that innateness and then society amplifies it by saying men have to do this, have to pay the bills, do this, do certain provider parameters, things of that nature, it kind of already formulates you having the mindset of that you're always going to be needed. So like when you go through your fundamental years of through adolescence or young adults, when you go through relationships, things of that nature, those are usually when it's like those providers start instincts start coming in. Like that's when the grooming of being a provider starts, where it's like you can think of something small like the Valentine's Day gifts or like different stuff like that when you have a girlfriend, things of that nature. It's like you're already like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. So as you continue to go up and through the years, as you keep progressing, you now in the back of your mind, you're always like, I want to feel needed. I want to feel needed because you want to keep satisfying that role of whether it's self accomplishment, whether it's just in the back of your mind, or you just know your partner and you're like, okay, I know they're gonna need something. Let me go do something.
mm.
And
Thank you.
I feel like it stems from a lot of that.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective as a man. So I'd like to say, personally, I believe that it is definitely rooted in conditioning. Um,
I can see
I,
that.
f- what'd you say?
No, I said I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah, because the thing is, with men, they have been conditioned to like step into this provider role, but that's really because of the way that society has like set up like gender roles and things of that nature. Specifically like during like the industrialization period where things like farming and stuff like that was getting to be like less valuable and they wanted the dinero. So men
Mm-hmm,
had to go out and get
mm-hmm,
real work and make real money.
mm-hmm,
While women were not allowed to. So essentially, women had to rely on men, and they liked the position that they were in because it benefited them. Not only did they have money, but with that money came power, but it came at the cost of them being wage slaves. So it's like we talk about men feeling needed, I think it's really just like remnant of the times where men were actually needed because we low key, respectfully, we don't really need y'all anymore. Like, respectfully.
I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I feel
Like,
like
go
my
ahead.
fault. My fault. I didn't mean to cut your wisdom system. My fault. Go ahead.
I just say that because when we think about what we need men for,
Mm,
back in the day,
mm,
women had no choice but to rely on men for financial reasons, for lifestyle, a bank account, house, land, whatever, and for having kids. Those were
mm,
the two main reasons women were
mm,
married off so their families can get money, so they can have kids and have a stable life. Now we
mm.
have IVF, we have government assistance, we can get jobs. So it's like we don't really need men anymore. We can have men and it's nice to have men, but do we need men to live? No. And that's okay.
See, I feel like that right there, and I feel like certain conversation like that, it breeds like I think it's a false sense of independence. I think, and I
Mm.
feel like, that's that whole conversation right now. Like men feel need. I think a lot of it is just more so of like for an effective relationship between men and women, both parties need to feel needed. So just the same way that like, for example, you could be in a relationship with a guy, right? And you're gonna want he could instantly go do everything, like go clean, go out and work, go do this, go do that, go do that, and you could just sit there and he'll do everything. But to us, you're gonna get to a certain point, you're like, damn, I want to feel needed, I want to feel noticed. That's all it boils down to. It's not a feeling of I want to be needed. It's just I want to be noticed. I want to be able to look at my shawty
Exactly.
and she be like, oh, I want you to do this, and it's like, oh, okay, I feel good because I want to do it just as a form of like a self gratitude or things of just seeing the accomplishment of it. And I feel like the whole idea of like us perpetuating, oh, I don't need a shawty, I could do it all. Like even toxic
Mm-mm.
masculinity or hyper feminism, it's like you're going two opposite ways when it's like to what benefit?
But that's not what I'm saying, Malik. Okay, you can feel seen. Everyone deserves to be
For
seen
sure.
and appreciated, but that doesn't
Mm.
mean that you are needed. Like the whole point of relationships is for there to be interdependence, not codependence. So
Oh, for sure.
neither party should really need the other, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also not talking about it in relationships, but like for individuals' point of view, like I feel as though men sometimes lack a sense of fulfillment and they tend to go looking for it in relationships where they know that they'll need to be, well, they're where they'll feel needed instead of just becoming whole people, so that they don't feel the need to be needed, you know?
Um, as I feel like brothers will understand, but I feel like it's an understanding feeling. I think a lot of it is men come looking for that in relationships because just with how this world is and how everyone else outside of your relationship, when you look at it outside of that, no one really is gonna really care about you or care about like what you do because whether it's you're just doing it just to complete a job or just to create a tick off or whatever, a lot of stuff outside of relationship is transactional. Even though some things in our relationship are transactional, it's amplified more once you get outside of that because once you're in a relationship, it's like I'm doing this because I care for this person. So as a guy, like I could say like you look for that validation and that notoriety, I guess that's the right word, in the relationship because it's coming from more of a place of like, okay, this person is noticing me because they care about me, not because they just want me. I'm just doing this for a job because they're my boss, or just doing this because it's transactional. I'm doing this for a favor or whatever, whatever. It's more like it feels more genuine. So I feel
Mm.
like that, and unfortunately, you just don't find that out in the world. You really don't. Like, especially as a guy, I'm not trying to say women don't go through this, but I can only speak from a guy's perspective. It's just because it's always pick yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, especially when it comes to men. Just because the front line, whatever kind of traditional mindsets are still amplified through society. A lot of that is still rippled throughout there. So as you go out, it's like, damn, I gotta go do this. I gotta go do this. I gotta go do this. I gotta do this. Versus it's like my my partner comes up and it's like, oh, can you? I want you to do this for me. Can you please do this for me? And it's just like how it is. It's just like, damn, okay. I never heard it in this way before. And it's just like I said, a more genuine, more soft approach kind of thing. And it's just like a different spin on it. It could be the same way as far as being asked and doing a task, but it's just a different spin on it. So I don't know if
No,
that.
yeah. I mean, I think men should be appreciated for their efforts. I get where you're coming from with that.
Sure.
Um, I just think putting in effort is obviously something that you're gonna want to do when you're with a partner,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing that a lot of men don't always seem to realize, and even like within the show,
Mm-hmm.
in Joe's mind, he's thinking he's boyfriend of the year because he's doing all these things out of the desire to be needed by the women he's in relationships with, even though it oversteps their boundaries.
Of
So I
course.
think sometimes men have this idea of what it is that they think women want or need from them, and they tend to overact and do the people pleasing and the love bombing. And women are just over here like, relax, you know? It's okay because it can come off as like overcompensating sometimes and disingenuous when you're like constantly putting yourself at this place of feeling of wanting to be needed. You know, it's like, who are you without this? You know, so it's like I think that effort should be made and that men should be recognized for that effort they put into relationships if it's genuine. But I just think coming into a relationship with the idea that you're gonna feel more needed because you maybe don't feel needed in other areas of your life is more of something that is, like you said, like it's due to society. Men are always taught that they have to be doing something for somebody, and it does ripple into your relationships. So, I think it's just a little bit more harmful than we're led to believe.
It gets on. So to break up what you said, because you talked about three different things I kind of want to touch on. So one, we got to understand Joe's a sociopath. That nigga, that guy is crazy. My fault. My apologies. He's crazy. I definitely think he's more of an exaggerated version of what the
I
common person is.
mean, yes, but like that's he's also like very real. Like that's a
No,
lot of
no, no.
men.
He's definitely real. He's not. You feel me? He's not. He's not a brother. But you know how that goes. So I can't speak on that. But just on the it is still exaggerated. I definitely he
Well,
belong
yes, it's
he
fiction.
yeah, no, he definitely belongs in a you know
And see, I think the reason also why I go kind of hard on this is because when it comes to men, um, they don't like to adjust their emotions, unless it's like anger or something. So it's
what I
like
was gonna say.
that's what you're gonna say?
Uh-huh.
Hmm?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, so yeah, they don't like to adjust their emotions. So it's like when they are emotional, it's usually at somebody's harm or extent because they're expressing it aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about men not feeling needed, not only does it seep into their relationships, but it seeps into how they view women, how they treat women, and just how they act and show up in society in general. So I think that's where the whole like male loneliness epidemic stems from. And, it just pedestals men's emotions to such a heightened degree that it's at the expense of the women who are having to live through their tyranny. So, I just want to take a little quote real quick,
Mm-hmm.
um, from this book. It's called A History of Masculinity by Ivan Jablanka. And it's a little quote, okay? Because the thing is, men want women to care about the male loneliness epidemic, and women just have such a hard time doing so, not because we don't want to understand men and what they're experiencing, but because half the time it just comes out at our expense. So, yeah, this is just what Ivan had to say. It is no longer up to women to torture themselves with questions about their life choices, justify themselves at every moment, exhaust themselves reconciling with work, motherhood, family life, and leisure. It is up to men to catch up with a world that has changed. The onus is on them to question themselves about the masculine without buying into the mythology of the hero of modern times who deserves a medal because he has programmed the washing machine. So, I could go on, but I'll just stop the quote there. But to me, that was just a really key point, especially with like watching you and stuff, because in Joe's mind, he's a feminist. Like he thinks he's like supporting women and he can just, do whatever he must to protect them. When in reality, he's causing a lot more harm, obviously. And that's something that just a lot of men do. They think they're going out of their way, being this perfect gentleman, when in reality, you're just being weird. And they're not able to shift with the pendulum that is changing from this sense of entitlement that came from them having to make a living for a family, that sense of pride that comes with that. And now the roles have shifted, and it seems like they're just at a bit of a loss and they're getting left behind.
I feel like I feel like a lot of it is just comes with the fact of as the only thing that's not that hasn't I feel like the true indicator of why stuff hasn't shifted is because the ability to effectively communicate and efficiently listen is not going with the time. So as far as I can say, like I say both sides because one, women will say something, but men don't efficiently listen, and I can say that. I feel like that's when you put it with the mansplaining things of that nature, like there's just a discrepancy, but there's also a lack of the ability to effectively communicate because both, and this attributes both parties, where from the beginning things are not established to what is needed. You feel me, in the relationship to allow it to grow. So just like how you said, like Joe thinks he's a hyper feminism, things of that nature. Effectively being able to communicate is them saying they don't want it to be said. Where there is examples in the show where they said that. However, that's where it goes hand in hand with the listening because you have to listen and also be able to communicate to be able to convey both thoughts and understand what the thoughts is being said. So I feel like once that's established, it will disrupt the whole thing of like what we just been saying. It's like the independency, things of that nature, because both parties will know what they want and both parties will understand and hear what the other party is saying. And
Hmm.
I feel like that's the foundation of a relationship. If you can't effectively communicate to someone and they take what you say and vice versa and implement it, you're not, you're already building your house on sandy ground. Like you're already like, it's already not going nowhere. So I feel like once it starts there, that's when it goes up, and that's how you disrupt the whole thing of like what we were saying about the Joe and the whole discussion of just men and women. It always just goes back to
But
communication.
you don't think maybe it should be the idea of masculinity as a social construct that should be critiqued before we step into the idea of relationships?
I feel like I feel like the only way to address. Give me an example of what you mean by the idea of masculinity.
Like, when I say the idea of masculinity, I mean masculinity as a social construct through gender norms, gender in general that we're, expressed through our sex. Because masculinity, much like femininity, the gender norms of it all, gender roles, it's all a societal pressure. It's not anything that, in my opinion, or just factually, is biologically inherently different between men and women. Like we have a lot more in common biologically than we do not. So the idea of what masculinity is has shifted as times have moved. I mean, we went from men smoking cigars and playing fucking, I don't know, whatever men play. And now we have men drinking matcha and dirty chai. So, I mean, the idea of masculinity has
I feel
shifted
like
a lot.
I feel like a lot of it just stems from, and like what I said, like to go off the what I said about communication. I feel like because there's so many thought processes of what it is to be masculine. Like we can go down a list, and one person will say, "Oh, it's masculine to go out, chop down a tree, and go build a cabin." Another person will be like, "Oh, it's masculine still if a person wears earrings or hoops or whatever." Another person can say, "Oh, it's still masculine if he wears a dress." It's everyone has their different definitions, so we can't say, "Oh, we'll
But
tackle."
that's what I'm saying. So, what I'm saying is like, should we critique masculinity as a construct before we enter critiquing men in relationships?
I feel like you can, but I feel like that just opens up the door for just pointing the finger.
How?
I feel like as far as now it makes you question who is the governor or the judge jury of what is masculinity.
But when I say like critiquing masculinity, I'm not talking about like, what it is men bring to the table. I'm talking about the idea of masculinity socially, like the idea of what it means to be a man, what men should wear, what men should do in relationships, what men should be, not what men are. That's what I'm talking about. So it's
But
like,
and that's what I say. That's what I'm saying. Who could be the judge of that? Same way we could say sit here and say we can same way me if I was here, like, another guy could come up. Like let's say the hyper toxic, the hyper masculine men out here, how they come out and criticize women on things that they do, criticize feminism, things of that femininity, things of that nature, right? Because this is we're talking about the opposite spectrum now. So, but they receive backlash because it's like, who are you to judge a woman, right? Or what a woman should be, what a woman is, kind of thing. Just off the same cusp, right? It's I'm saying that it opens a door now to be like, okay, what makes you the person to be able to judge me? Even they can come up to me and be like, what makes you the person to judge me of what a man is? That I'm just saying it's always going to be a pointing game. Not saying that we can't create our own clicks and circles of like, okay, I feel like, okay, cool. Like I understand a man is this. Like me and you can sit here and be like, okay, this is cool. This is healthy masculinity. We can agree with that. But as a society, we have too many people that are just we have as a society, we have so many outliers now in 2025 that now we cannot it is I hate to use the word impossible, but it's just unlikely for the fact of us to be able to come on one accord and be like, damn, this is wrong.
but here's the thing, Malik. We live in a patriarchal society. So whether we like it or not, there is one universal idea as to what a man is, at least in America, and in our time and culture. But so because of that, we live in a world where we are affected by men and their decision making and what it means to be a man. So it seeps into something as simple as a 9 to 5. Women have a completely different hormonal schedule. It's not taken into account because we're not a man. So it's little things like that that slip into our reality that affects women and our place in society. So that's really why I invite everybody to critique masculinity, not to like pick at men or anything, but just to look at it from a societal standpoint because it is in fact a social construct, just like femininity is male, female, gender, it's all a social construct. Um, so I have like I want to take another quote from the same book because I looked into this book, but it was eating. So and this also will explain, I think, why I wanted to critique masculinity from a point of an individual level, not from a relationship standpoint, because it really starts from the self. So, and I quote, all activism must begin with soul searching. Such self-examinations concern first all of those in power, politicians, top officials, business leaders, managers, advertisers, urban planners, and more. All must reflect on masculinity in general, and for men, their own in particular. Are there situations where I take advantage of my status as a man without even intending to, without even knowing it? Is the masculine defined by the force, aggressiveness, the drive for power and money, putting others down? Why do men scorn women? Why do men who scorn women also despise certain men, perceiving them to be degenerate or traitors to their sex? There are thousands of ways of being a man, hence the idea of masculinities. We can conceive a man who is a feminist, but also of a man who accepts his share of the feminine, a man utterly offended by violence and misogyny, a man who abandons the roles he is compelled to take on, a man without authority, arrogance, privilege, and the pretension of representing all humankind. The new masculinities can cure the masculine of the superiority complex. So I feel like in that the author just goes into detail as to why masculinity needs to be critiqued because it not only affects us on a micro scale, but it affects the world in which is governed by men. So, yeah.
I agree. I feel like it comes down ultimately to like what we said as far as just now we're entering the day and age where it's becoming a transition point between traditional masculinity and just the new age masculinity, but it's more so of a it's like I said, it's just that transition point. I think it's just coming down to no one is now knows what is masculinity because it's either you're too far on the spectrum as far as you're too traditional and you kind of just don't care what women have to say, or you're more of like on the other end as where you're dipping heavily into femininity. You see what I'm saying? Like as far as like how can I say this? I'm gonna just keep it at the broad strand of just like I feel like that's why it's a great area. That's why we have situations like what we said with the show with you. We have like the Joe because it's like he's in that gray area of I do the traditional things of try to be the provider, try to do all this stuff, but then it's like I feel like I justify it by trying to be on the other end of being a feminist and femininity, things of that nature. Like I feel like this is what she wants, so I'm gonna try to think ahead. So it's like he's that's why it's like so crazy because he's jumping between both sides.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the point of like tradition and masculinity because I feel like so often when we talk about what traditional masculinity is, we're talking about like 1950s American masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not even that long ago. Like, I guess you could say that was traditional, but like, that wasn't even that long ago. If we want to talk about traditional, like, there was a point in history where men were wearing powdered faces, huge wigs, capri pants, and kitten heels. So it's like, what's really traditional? And even with the idea of like men in traditional societies, there were matriarchal societies at one point where the gender roles for men looked different. So when we're talking about tradition, we have to also think about culture and geographic location because American masculinity is not the same as masculinity in New Guinea or something, like it's very different depending on where you are, where you live, which is why it's like a social construct. And it just so happens that gender is such a big talking point, especially in America, that it affects our livelihood at every turn. So, with that, I want to ask you a question.
Ooh, question time.
So, as a self-proclaimed non-traditional man,
For sure, for sure. 50-50
what
around here. So my fault. Go ahead.
what traditional masculine ideals do you hold on to and why?
There's not many, but I feel like certain things that are like as minuscule as they sound, it's a
Mhm.
large picture thing as far as like I do agree with the whole thing of like I can say in my day to day. I'll give day to day examples that I do, and however people want to categorize this, however people want to categorize it. So, like something that I do with my girlfriend, I open every door for my girlfriend. It could be her car door. It could be I'm in the passenger seat. She's driving. I will open up. Now, don't get it twisted. I will definitely be that passenger prince. Don't get it twisted. I enjoy being that, but I will gladly open her door as she hops into that driver's seat. Stuff like that. Stuff like that. However, but also things like as far as like let's say I don't know like what is being a provider like something I find joy in is like as much as I hate it, as much as I hate it, I still will go out and do whatever for my girlfriend. And I feel like that's what any man should do as far as like go out, go get a job. Go get a job, go provide for your family. I have no issue paying all the bills, things of that nature, covering everything. But however, however,
Oh Lord, however.
there is definitely, my shorty have a job. We going at this together. You feel me?
No,
So,
that's real.
that's a new traditional. But I feel like it's a lot of like, typical like quote unquote manly stuff. If it's something like with a car, something with the building something, like I try to step in and do it. But I definitely want to make it more of like a team effort. Like if I'm building something, at least read the instructions to me. At least hand me a screwdriver. You feel me? Like something along those lines. Like it's definitely
Right,
like more
right.
help, but it's not many things where I can say like, oh, this is traditional. Like this is me. Like it's like
So, so why do you hold on to those specific ideals of like the chivalry and provider roles?
I feel like it's just the act of like just to show chivalry is not dead. I know it's like a kind of cliche saying, but I feel like every woman on this earth deserves some form of chivalry. I feel like they do. Whether you could be the most independent woman in the world, I feel like to a certain degree you deserve some sort of chivalry. I think you should be able to experience having the door held for you, a guy laying a jacket on the ground for you, different things like that. Like
Mm.
you might hate it, but at the end of the day, it's just a form of like, oh, I never experienced this before. But and so
You
it's
said
just like
we might hate it or you might hate it.
no. I'm saying both parties get hated. Like as far as like, but I'm saying I'm going from the extreme of saying like the most independent person that just hates,
Okay,
like
okay,
just
okay. I see
just
what you're
doesn't
saying.
want to experience that. It's like maybe
Yeah.
you should at some point. Because I
Okay.
can say from my personal experience, my girlfriend is a very independent woman, very 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 independent. But I had to kind of I don't want to say grace her, but introduce her to that whole chivalry aspect of it. So now she just eats it up now. It's the whole holding the door, whatever kind of chivalrous thing. And so it is a booster for me to continue going on it because I see the appreciation in it. You see what I'm saying? So
Mm.
that's kind of why I hold on to it. And I feel like a lot of those things, like I said in the beginning, is like certain stuff is just innate. Certain stuff just makes sense to like go get a
Yes, because
job.
I feel like with your what you're saying there is kind of tying back to what we were talking about in the beginning about men and their effort, but also wanting to be appreciated and recognized, um, without necessarily having to feel needed. And like I mentioned before, I do believe that that's due to conditioning and the idea that men need to feel that need
That
I don't
note,
know.
that notice, that
No, but I
notoriety.
don't want to confuse the two because I do think that men should be noticed. I just don't think that men should have to feel needed to like
Oh, like that
get the full
yearning,
appreciation.
that yearning for appreciation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like, 'cause I feel like that is definitely more stemmed in validation, and stroking in their own ego, which comes
Mm-hmm.
from the wage slave mentality that men were groomed into, through society and like productivity culture and just having to like provide for your family. So I think it's more rooted in that. But as like I mentioned, and we talked about like masculinity, it's changed from the past. It's
For sure.
currently changing. We're seeing like a pretty big shift in masculinity,
For
and we're
sure.
seeing how some men are adapting. They're drinking the dirty chais and they're reading feminist
No,
literature,
for sure. I'm right there with them. For sure.
right? What's your Starbucks order again?
Oh, I get a French vanilla ice latte with light ice and extra mocha drizzle. Um,
Tea.
yeah, for sure. I usually get that. I haven't tried none of the teas yet, but I have been looking at the little matcha tea and the little chai tea. I have been looking at that side.
Right.
But
So we have men go shifting into that.
for
But
sure.
then we have men who are getting left behind. So
I could speak on it as like a guy that's like just like what you touched on, kind of put me on the spot of it a little bit as being like the non-traditional
mm,
guy. It definitely is an interesting side of seeing like just the struggle between the two because
mm,
like out of all of my male friend groups and stuff like that, I'm definitely like the outlier of the group of as far as like the traditional mindset. And it's just very interesting just to see like, typical like as far as like how you just listed as far as what is traditional things that men hold on to. And when you talk to when I say that to a lot of my guy friends, they go like a step further. It's like the provider. I have what I say goes. It's like kind of like that more so of a lack of better words, controlling mindset. I'm sorry. However, but it's just
no,
like
it's
that
definitely controlling.
for sure. So it's
Mm.
like it's just so interesting to like when you talk to me, I'm more lackadaisical with it because I feel like it's more of a unionship partnership. But when you talk to more of these traditional mindset people that hold on to it, it's like a more of controlling of like I gotta have the reins 25/8.
And I
And
feel
it's
like that really does just tie into the sense of entitlement that came with the mentality of the superiority complex of the idea of
mm-hmm,
masculinity that was like kind of shoved down a lot of men's throats. Because with you being the solo breadwinner and the provider, there's a sense of like pride that comes with that. And it's like, you're flaunting. And now that that's kind of slipping away, women are earning more money than men, graduating more than men,
mm-hmm,
have different careers. You could have relationships that are falling to imbalance because the woman makes more money. You can see how this resists. this resistance in like the changes in the workforce and you know academically is affecting men because the idea of men being providers has become somewhat of their identity. And so now we're just seeing this resistance because they feel like attacked because women are not wanting that. But the thing is, women never wanted that. That is just how our society ran. You feel me? Like women did not go out and ask men to pay all our bills and be providers. We could not live without it. Like we couldn't get a job. We couldn't make money. We couldn't have our own bank account. It's like that was the way that things were set up to be. So I feel like with that came that sense of entitlement to now we see this resistance because men don't have to do that anymore and they're feeling a shake in their identity and now they feel lost.
So I I agree with part of it, but then there's still some things where like I'm like, so
Okay, well, what is it?
I definitely think it is a shakeup as far as like men have been conditioned to where I'm the provider, I'm the breadwinner, things of that nature type of mentality. However, I still think it's also a cornerstone in a relationship. I feel like in a lot of relationships, I feel like as much as we can sit here and still, because when we say traditional, I feel like everyone will have the common understanding of like a 1950s relationship. It's what we deem as traditional. So I feel like it's still a cornerstone because as much as we can sit here and try to tear that down, there is still a lot of relationships being built around the fact that men are the providers.
No, for sure. Yeah. Like, I
So
mean,
so that and that's what I'm trying to say as far as like as much as we could sit here and try to tear that down, that is a cornerstone in it. So like for example, I could do I use my life experiences right now. I'm in my relationship. My shawty's independent, things of that nature. However, as much as independent she is, she still looks at me as a cornerstone and like, okay, where's your money at? Because
mhm.
I'm deemed as a provider, the head, whatever kind of thing it is. But and that's found throughout many relationships. So as far as we could, like I'm saying, we could try to tear it down or try to dismantle it, things of that nature. It's still a foundational piece in a lot of, and just even outside of a relationship, it's a foundational piece as far as the beginning of a unionship with people. They look at that as a part like that is a large portion. Like unfortunately, a lot of men are viewed as what their money is
No,
because
don't. Oh, go ahead.
because as much as we can sit here and say like you find a guy and he reads, he does all this extra stuff, right? That is add-ons, but the main thing you're gonna look at is be like, okay, if I'm going to come with you, what do you bring to my life? Because of course you already know what you bring,
Mm.
but indirectly, inadvertently, you're always gonna look and be like, okay, but what that money look like, what that credit score look like, what that like it's going to be something. It's
No, don't get it twisted now.
for
I don't want
sure.
you to get it confused,
No, for sure, for sure,
okay?
for sure, for sure, for
Like
sure.
one, whatever your relationship looks like, if that's what works for y'all, role playing like it's the 1950s, then go ahead, go ahead. Two, we live in a capitalist society. You're gonna
For
have to have money to be in a relationship. That's foundation. Everybody should have money, relationship or not.
sure.
That's not what I'm saying. Um, I'm not trying to tear down anything. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
making a point to notice the fact that things just aren't what they used to be. Like when I say things about financial standpoints, yes, a lot of women do want men to bear that responsibility. But personally, I do believe that that is because of conditioning, one. And two, because like I said, the 1950s, that wasn't that long ago. Like, that sense of traditionalism wasn't even that long ago. So naturally, there's still going to be remnants of that. However, as far as like when it comes to like the money stuff, that's really just like more of like a side. Like, yes, have money. What I'm saying is like I don't mean like a side like not a priority in a relationship. I mean like that is just a side effect to the mentality that comes with masculinity with wanting to have a sense of control and responsibility in relationships and just as a man in general. It's just something that kind of comes with it. You're always thinking about, what to do next, what you need to do, what you have to do, all this stuff. Um, and so the money is kind of more of like where your priority is because it's been forced to pivot that way because you have to show up as this provider because you're not viewed as a provider if you don't have the money to provide. But what I was saying is like just turning away from that, not saying that you shouldn't have money, but just saying that we should shift the focus because that's just simply what has happened. That's what I was saying. What has happened in society, like men don't have to be these sole breadwinners like that used to be a income household. We live in like two income
Mm-hmm.
household. Men are rarely the breadwinners these days. So that's what I'm saying.
So you're saying that we should go from, because traditional mindset was one person dictates most of what goes on in the household, right? So you're saying we should go from that mindset to more of a partnership mindset. Is what you're saying?
Yes. And I'm not saying that, there's anything wrong with a man being sole provider. Personally, I wouldn't want that because with that financial, what's a good word? Like that just leaves for a lot of room for neglect and abuse of power, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just the way that society was set up. The stock market shit was a lot cheaper back then, and even so, those one income households were struggling. So now we have women who have the ability to get a job, to have a career, and think for themselves and have autonomy. We're most likely going to have jobs. So the need for a man to be the sole provider and breadwinner just isn't a need anymore. Like it's a want. Sure, lots of women want that, but it's not a need. So I feel like that's what affects that's where the whole male loneliness epidemic is coming from because men are having a hard time coping with the fact that they are no longer needed. But if they would just shift their perspective to a need in the sense of financial and how can I meet my partner's needs emotionally, mentally in a relationship, they probably wouldn't feel that way.
I feel like it's a lot of things. Like as much as me and you've had this conversation before, and I know we're not going to agree, but when I say this, but I believe it's a real thing. I just think, and you kind of chimed at it a little bit, where it's like I think I think a lot of times, when we're talking about a generalized format,
Right.
men and women just look at things two different ways. I think it's just like the book, what women are from Venus, men are from Mars. It's just like when you get to the real baseline of it, we're always gonna look at stuff two different ways. Like just like what you guys said is like, when you said earlier, you was like, oh, men just look at it as like they see a problem, it's fix it, instead of trying to look at it from a wider lens. And it's like, unfortunately, I feel like that's just what it is. Like a woman might
Mm.
look at it as far as like, you just like what you said, you could look at it as like, oh, why don't you tap into emotional, mentally, things of that nature. It's just like a lot of times those aren't the realistic resolutions. Like
Mm.
I'm saying it in a way of like, yes, it would be helpful to be able to, yes, I talk to you, we get on the same page about like, oh, let's do this, let's do that, emotionally, mentally, things of that nature. However, sometimes when you look at a situation, it's needed from more of a, all right, this is the problem, this is the solution, let's just do this one right here. You see what I'm saying? It's sometimes it needs more of a cut and dry response versus a try to go and break it down and things of that nature. You see what I'm saying? I feel like you're not.
I see what you're saying. Um,
But
it's
I'm saying
just
it from a man's perspective. I'm saying it like
no, yeah,
from what
that's
you
what you're
just
here for.
said, for
Hmm.
sure. That's
Right.
how I took it. I'm like,
No, yeah, I get that. I just personally, again, I just think it goes back to conditioning. I don't think men and women inherently, we have different ways of perceiving things for sure. But I think the way that we are programmed to respond to things due to our upbringing is a lot more of the issue than this inherent biological difference between men and women. So that's really kind of more of my opinion on it. And this might be the last time. Maybe it won't be, but it might be the last time. I'll quote this book again because I think everybody should read this book. Okay, I think everyone should read this book. Okay, so, and I quote, and this is under literally the premise of new masculinities. It says, where should I start? Okay, yeah, okay. Men feel targeted and threatened, but they are above all unable to see it as truly revolutionary development that it is. Indeed, many have viewed it as more of agitation, at best, as changing old practices, at worst, merely girl stuff. This explains why feminists have often been on their own, leading to a sense that there is a war between sexes. On the other hand, many men feel attacked by feminist demands while on the other, some women refuse to collaborate with their oppressors. These two positions stem from the same premise that equality between sexes does not concern men. That is not true. So, to me, this just delegates the point where you mentioned that things just will not change because men and women think differently, but that's just not true. I think oftentimes because it's more comfortable for men to sit in the society, even though it does harm them in their own ways, as not being able to show up authentically, whether that be emotionally or mentally or physically, how they want to dress, their appearance, whatever. There is still a comfort in the idea that there is an entire system that will back you and support you, so when women are making demands and critiques on masculinity, they take it as a personal attack and just assume that we're never going to agree and we'll never understand one another. And I don't think that's true. I just think that women are reaching out to try to understand men. That's why we're exploring the depths of masculinity, but men are not meeting us there. So I think that's where people get fed up. And that's why men feel as though they're being attacked and left behind, when in reality, they're just not making the same strides towards a true equality or understanding of one another because it shakes up their identity.
I mean, I agree. No, as far as like what I'm saying is, like I said, I feel like we're just going to view it two different ways. I definitely think, which is what I said in the beginning, I think it definitely comes down to the communication aspect. I feel like I said, effective communication and efficient listening. And I feel like it's like once that combination comes out, it's like it'll be more fruitful. But I
Mhm.
do also in turn think it is like I think it will definitely meet more in the middle as far as like if men, like how you said, women are speaking out right now and they are explaining what an identity and masculinity is, things of that nature. I think it should be men should take that in. However, yeah, like I said, it still comes down to the fact of what classify as masculinity. I feel like in my mind, it's still like how I process it, it still cycles back to okay, like just like you reading out your full things of that nature, it's still just saying to me, it's just like, okay, how do we govern what that is? You
Mhm.
feel me? So I feel like an easy way we could take quotes from that book and say like, oh yeah, this is what men do, this is what men do. But me as a guy, I'm like, that ain't that right. Or another person could say, this is what I study, this is what I know, this is whatever. I feel like a lot of it comes to perspective and subjection to how that person views that certain topic or that certain outline in that space and time. So I feel like it does boil down to like communication between both genders, but men are too prideful and they won't listen and things of that nature. And I feel like that's just the way society has pushed it. I mean, at the end of the day.
No, I
So,
agree.
um, yeah, I don't know.
I okay, yeah, no, I agree. I do think it boils down to communication and
Oh,
damn, what
and
was I
I think it also boils down to communication, also for women, as far as like women. I feel like I've noticed this. Like women will say what they want in like a like let's say men. Like everyone is subject to what they want in a relationship, things of that nature, right? However, and this is just me just to flip the coin because I don't want to seem like I'm just pandering. I don't want to seem like that as well. But I think it's a thing of like a lot of people try to toot up their own horn and try to say like, this is what I want, this is what I want, or I want this super masculine man, or I want this super non-traditional man, things of that nature, but then cut corners when it's time to actually pick a partner. And I feel like a lot of times that's what causes the discrepancy because no one wants to stand 10 toes on what they want because they scared of how society is going to judge them. Like me, I will happily say to anybody, I'm a non-traditional man. I said it to my own traditional father, things of that nature. And that ruffles feathers, but I stand on what I stand on. Same way I said I want an independent woman because I like the certain qualities. Certain people don't stand on certain parameters that they feel. So it creates a discrepancy between all of this. And I feel like that's why a lot of the toxic masculinity is brewing because no one stands on it. Women will sit here and say, oh, I hate toxic masculinity. But as soon as someone comes with the right energy or right looks or right things of that nature, they start crippling and folding. And they're like, maybe I can deal with this. And I feel like a lot of times, as much as we want to point the finger, and that's what I was trying to say earlier, as much as we want to point the finger as masculinity, we also have to point the finger back because certain people are doing that.
No, but
And that's a two-way street. That's a two-way street. I don't want to make it seem like I just want to more emphasize women just because we've been talking about men this whole time, but it's a two-way street as well.
no, yeah, you had to say your little two cents so we get it. No,
Mm-hmm.
no, but that's what I'm coming from. Like I said, this is not about men as a sex. This is about masculinity as a social construct, and that does require women holding men accountable. So I like that point. I do think it pains me to see like women go for some bullshit and get done dirty by these men who are clearly playing in their face, all for the sake of what? Having a man, it sickens me, truly. So I get it. And it is easier said than done, I guess, because everybody gets swept up in the ideas. Hey, everything Layla here. So I just wanted to cut in right here and say that while I do believe that women should be holding men accountable, I first and foremost believe that it is the sole responsibility of men to share that burden and hold each other accountable. Y'all don't be letting your lame ass homeboys know that they're fucking lame, and it's a problem. Y'all heavily enable one another and bake each other up in times where you should be questioning behavior. I don't know if that's that like leader of the group thing, like even that in itself, like what? But yeah, definitely have to come up here and say that, especially because it's usually other men indoctrinating men and feeding their ego with, ideas that they are superior just because they're men. So I think first and foremost, um, men need to be holding other men accountable because it low key be starting with them. And women sometimes just fall into the trap of enabling them because of that internalized misogyny. So, first and foremost, it goes back to the system. Who set that system up? Yes, but I wanted to look at masculinity as it being harmful to everybody, not just women, but also to men internally. So yeah, I thought that was a good point. And I feel like we can successfully say like masculinity is a social construct, right?
No, for sure. Masculinity,
Right.
femininity, things
So
are a lot of stuff
so
is
even
social
right. So even when we talk about like
or feminism,
um
my fault.
no, you had it right the first time, but it's
Mm,
okay.
for sure.
But even when we talk about like, okay, what does masculinity look like? Who gets to govern that? Um, that's the thing. I think the issue is we spend so much time trying to label um men and women and gender altogether that we get into the state of rigidity that men are now forced to show up a certain way, women had to show up a certain way, and now the line is blurred as to what is a man and what is a woman. When in reality, we should just be able to just be ourselves, however we express ourselves. And even with like what you said about who gets to decide, unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, it's already clearly been decided, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. So
For
now,
sure.
why we're even bringing it up is because women are we now have the voice and the autonomy to say, hey, this isn't working. We don't like this. Men are coming out and saying, this isn't working. We don't like this. So now we're seeing a shift in what masculinity looks like here in the West, because again, culture, nationality, geographics, all matters. So we're now cultivating this new idea of masculinity. So I think it's still like, it's just taking time, but I think What we need to do altogether is just get rid of the binary system as to what is masculine and what is feminine and come into that sense of duality altogether so that there's like some balance without assigning these heavy gender roles and ideals as to what masculinity is. With that, I want to ask another question.
Mhm.
So, with, masculinity being a social construct and we're seeing how it's changing, how do you think current masculine ideals shape modern men's identities? Is
Um,
that too big a question?
yeah, it was my fault. My
Okay,
fault.
that's fine. I
No,
don't
no, no,
expect you to
no.
have
As
all the
far as like
answers.
as far as like I'm trying to think of like I feel like I'm on Jeopardy right now. Say the question one more time.
Oh my God. Are you asking again?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you think current masculine ideals shape modern men's identities?
How do I think current
Like
masculine
with the
idea?
shifting of masculinity, what it looks like to be a man, it's changing. So how do you think that that change is affecting men's identity
Um, I think,
personally?
I think it's honestly causing the battle. Like I said, it's causing the battle between and like a gray area of like what is a man, because easily like I'll walk around, I'm a man. Like ain't nobody ever gonna take that from me. But I just govern myself a certain different way. And I can't take like one of my homeboys or whatever, say like they have more traditional mindset. If anything, all it's doing is just waging a war and just I don't want to say war, but it's kind of like a imaginary war as far as like everyone
Like
just wants to
between men and
but
women or between men internally?
between men internally, because now
Mm,
it's like there's certain artists right now that are coming out, they're wearing dresses, things of that nature, and you'll see in the comment sections like people will be like, ooh, like what's going on with that, like,
mm,
but then you'll see some people that be like, nah, that's fashion, like it's just that's just
hmm.
what it is. So all is this certain it's just showing a shift, and you just see it's just drawing a line in the sand, like
But wouldn't you say it's like for the better? Now men are able to express themselves more openly.
it just depends on who you're talking to.
That's true. Yeah,
Honestly,
that's
it
true.
just depends. Like you're speaking to me about it, but I'm more open minded to it.
Hmm.
Like there is certain things where I can we me within myself. I'll be like, nah, I'll never see myself doing that. But like, go ahead, twin. But like, if you talk to someone else, they'll be like, burn them at the stake.
Mm.
Like it just depends on who you talk to. So it just
Okay.
and I feel like that's just all that's being shown right now. So
All right. Well, that was my last question. And I wanted to have this conversation because it really starts with the men in our lives for real, like um as women know, like you said earlier, women, we have to hold men accountable. And this wasn't me doing that. This was just an open discussion. But I just think it's really important to have these conversations with the men in our lives, see where their heads at so we don't end up with, sociopaths in our midst. So thank you for coming on and giving us your 2 cents,
glad to
giving us
be
some of
here.
your time.
Glad to be
My
here,
my
man.
closest male friend.
I'll chill, Hopefully I can come back real soon.
Yeah, hopefully. So, a little thing we do here, Malik, we have like tea quotes today. I was drinking a Thai iced tea. It's gone now, but I do have a tea quote anyways. Let's see what it says.
A T quote. What is a T quote?
It's a quote from tea. It says, "He who wants a rose must respect the thorn." Persian proverb. I feel like that could kind of relate to what we said today.
What does it say?
He who wants a rose must respect the thorn. I kind of think that can relate to what we said today.
It is. As far as you want the benefit
It
of
does.
you want the benefit of it all, but you got to deal with the ups and downs that come with it. You can't just look at
Yeah,
the
I'm
beauty
gonna
of
let y'all
something
chew
with
on that.
yeah, you can't just look at the beauty of something without also looking at
The work,
the pain that comes with it.
the pain, all of it. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week. Peace.
Right?